Right now, there is a piece of bent wire sitting in your desk drawer. You have used it 1,000 times and never once thought about it. But 85 years ago, in a city crawling with soldiers, that same piece of wire was enough to get you arrested. It was an act of defiance. It was a declaration. And it helped hold a nation together when everything around it was falling apart. This is the story of the paperclip. And it is far stranger, far more human, and far more important than you ever imagined. Imagine walking through Oslo in the autumn of 1940. German soldiers stand on every corner. The king has fled to England. The Norwegian flag is banned. You cannot fly it, wear it, or display it in any form. And then a university student passes you on the street with something small and silver pinned to his lapel. A paper clip. Not a weapon, not a pamphlet, not a declaration of war. Just a bent loop of steel wire, the kind sitting in your desk drawer right now. But in that moment, in occupied Norway, that paper clip meant something that no soldier and no decree could silence. It meant, I am not with them. I am with you. We are bound together. To understand how a piece of wire arrived at that moment, we have to go back much further. Because the paper clip didn't appear fully formed from a single inventor's mind. It was the answer to a problem that plagued offices and governments for centuries, and the road to solving it was longer and stranger than almost anyone knows. By the middle of the 19th century, offices across Europe and America were drowning in paper. Governments, law firms, insurance companies, shipping merchants, they all produced mountains of correspondence, contracts, invoices, and records. And every single sheet was loose. So what did they do? They used straight pins. The kind you use for sewing. A clerk would push them through the corner of a stack of documents and pin the whole thing together. It worked, technically, in the same way that a leaky boat technically floats. Straight pins rusted. They left holes. They tore the paper when you removed them. And they stabbed people's fingers constantly. Archives from the period are filled with documents bearing rust-colored pinholes and small, dark stains from pricked skin. Some offices threaded ribbon through slits cut directly into the paper, tying bundles of documents together like a corset. Others used sealing wax to fix pages at the corner. One approach involved folding the corner of every sheet over itself and creasing it down. A method that worked for approximately 10 minutes before the paper uncurled and the whole thing fell apart. None of these were good solutions. All of them were slow, destructive, or infuriating. And every clerk in every office in the world knew there had to be a better way. The race to find that better way produced some genuinely bizarre results. In 1846, the English intellectual Herbert Spencer, the same Herbert Spencer who later coined the phrase, survival of the fittest, registered something he called a binding pin. By his own description, it was roughly 15 centimeters long when unfolded and looked far more like a modern cotter pin, the kind used to hold a wheel on an axle, than anything resembling a paper clip. It was sold commercially for a brief period and then disappeared without a trace. In 1867, an American named Samuel B. Fay received the first United States patent for a bent wire paper clip. The catch? Fay's clip wasn't designed for paper at all. It was invented to attach paper tickets to fabric, price tags on clothing, essentially. The patent mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that it could also hold papers together. Fay was solving a garment industry problem and happened to stumble sideways into office stationery. His clip never took hold in either world. Then in 1877, an American named Earlman Wright patented another clip specifically for fastening loose sheets of paper. It was marketed, it was sold, and it was fine, functional without being elegant, practical without being perfect. All of these attempts shared the same fundamental flaw. They were trying to engineer a solution. None of them realized the solution had already been quietly discovered by someone whose name we will never know. Sometime in the 1870s, a British company called Gem Manufacturing began producing a wire paper clip that was small, elegant, and almost identical to the paper clip we use today. 2 full loops, 1.5 turns of wire, exploiting something called the torsion principle, the natural spring force of metal that allows the clip to grip paper firmly without tearing it. It was essentially a perfect design, and it remains essentially unchanged to this day. The Gem paper clip was never patented. Nobody knows who designed it. The name of the person who created one of the most widely used objects in the history of human civilization is completely, irretrievably lost. They worked for gem manufacturing, or sold their design to the company, and then vanished from the historical record entirely. What we do know is that the earliest surviving illustration of this design appears in an advertisement from 1893. And by 1899, an American inventor named William Middlebrook of Waterbury, Connecticut, had patented not the paper clip itself but the machine that manufactured it at scale. The gem design is clearly visible in Middlebrook's patent drawings. He didn't invent the paper clip. He invented the means of making it cheap enough for the entire world to use, which, in practical terms, may have mattered even more. And this is precisely the point at which history took a strange and consequential detour. Meet Johan Valle. Valle was a Norwegian patent clerk working in Christiania, what is today Oslo, in the 1890s. In 1899, he filed a patent in Germany for a paper clip design, and in 1901 he received a United States patent for the same device. His clip had only 1.5 loops instead of 2. Without that second full loop, it could not properly exploit the torsion principle. To insert paper into Valle's clip, you had to lift the outer wire and push the sheets in at a near perpendicular angle, meaning the clip sat sideways on the document like the keel of a small boat. It didn't grip well. It was awkward to use. It was never manufactured commercially, never sold, and his patents expired quietly with nobody noticing. Valle died in 1910, largely forgotten. But decades later, Norwegians began constructing a national myth around him. The story went something like this. An unrecognized Norwegian genius had invented the paper clip, and the world had simply overlooked him. By the 1950s, Norwegian dictionaries listed Valle as the inventor of the paper clip. International encyclopedias repeated the claim without question. It became accepted fact. In 1989, Norway erected a 7-meter-tall paper clip statue in Sandvika, near Oslo, in his honor. The monument is striking and it still stands today. But look at it carefully, and you will notice something remarkable. The statue does not depict Valle's design. It depicts the gem paper clip, the British design he had nothing to do with. Norway built a monument to their forgotten genius using the wrong paper clip. A decade later, in 1999, they issued a commemorative postage stamp in his honor. Same problem. The stamp shows a gem clip. The man credited with inventing the paper clip didn't invent it. The design he actually created was never used by anyone. And the country that celebrates him got the shape wrong on both occasions. History, it turns out, has an extraordinary sense of irony. But this beautiful, factually incorrect myth was about to give the paper clip a meaning that no patent and no inventor could ever have bestowed upon it. It is April 1940. Germany has invaded Norway. After 2 months of fierce fighting, the country falls. The royal family and government flee to London. Roughly 350,000 German troops eventually occupy a nation of only 3 million people, one of the most disproportionate military occupations of the entire war. The occupiers move with systematic speed. They ban all symbols of Norwegian sovereignty, the flag, the royal cipher, any pin or badge showing allegiance to the exiled King Haakon VII. They order teachers to join the Nazi Party and deliver Nazi ideology in their classrooms. They instruct the church to preach obedience to the Reich. Anti-Jewish legislation is enacted. More than 700 Norwegian Jews are ultimately deported to Auschwitz and killed. In the autumn of 1940, students at the University of Oslo began wearing paper clips on their lapels. It was a small thing, a bent loop of wire. Nothing that could be confiscated, nothing that could be easily prohibited, nothing that looked like anything more than an office supply accidentally left on a coat. But the message was unmistakable to anyone who understood it. The paper clip meant solidarity. It meant resistance. It meant we are bound together, and no decree issued by an occupying army could sever that bond. The students wore it partly because the myth had already taken root. They genuinely believed the paper clip was a Norwegian invention, and wearing it was a way of claiming their own identity at the very moment it was being erased. The symbol spread outward from the university with remarkable speed. Teachers wore them. Shopkeepers wore them. Students fashioned paperclip bracelets and necklaces, binding themselves to one another literally and symbolically at the same time. The Germans didn't catch on immediately. A paperclip on a lapel is invisible to eyes that aren't looking for it. But the resistance was hiding in plain sight, and when the occupiers finally understood what the symbol meant, wearing a paperclip became a criminal offense. People were arrested for it. People were punished for it. And they kept wearing them anyway. The paperclip was not the only form of resistance. More than 12,000 Norwegian teachers refused outright to teach Nazi ideology in their classrooms. Approximately 1,000 of them were deported to prison camps in the frozen north of the country as punishment. Every bishop in Norway resigned in protest. Roughly 90% of the clergy followed. Norwegians refused to speak German to occupying soldiers on the street. They pointed German troops in the wrong direction when asked for guidance. They refused to sit beside soldiers on public transport, which enraged the occupiers so thoroughly that they made it illegal to stand on a bus if seats were available. And while more than 700 Norwegian Jews were shipped to their deaths, approximately 900 others were smuggled across the border to neutral Sweden by resistance networks operating at enormous personal risk. The paperclip, that tiny and anonymous symbol of unity, was threaded through all of it. Fast forward to 1998. Whitwell, Tennessee. Population just over 1,600. A small middle school in a town where almost everyone is white, almost everyone is Christian, and many of the students had never in their lives met a Jewish person. A group of 8th grade teachers decided to teach the Holocaust. Their students struggled, genuinely and honestly, to comprehend the scale of what they were being asked to understand. 6 million Jewish people murdered. 6 million. The number was too large to hold in the mind. It remained abstract, theoretical, safely distant from anything real. So the students asked a question that changed everything. What does 6 million actually look like? What could we collect 6 million of and hold in our hands and truly see? Someone suggested paperclips, and someone else remembered having read that Norwegians had worn them during the war as a symbol of solidarity against the Nazis. A paperclip is small. It is cheap. You can hold one between 2 fingers and feel its weight. The students began collecting them, writing letters to celebrities, politicians, authors, and businesses around the world. Collection boxes went up. The paperclips began arriving, and then kept arriving, and kept arriving, each one sometimes accompanied by a letter, a story, a name. The project stretched across several years. By its conclusion, the students of Whitwell Middle School had collected not 6 million paperclips, but 11 million, honoring not only the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust but the millions of others murdered by the Nazi regime. An authentic German railway transport car of the kind used to carry prisoners to the extermination camps was brought across the Atlantic and installed permanently on the school grounds. The paperclips fill it. The Children's Holocaust Memorial still stands at Whitwell Middle School today, and a documentary film simply titled Paperclips, released in 2004, brought the story to audiences around the world. Every year, thousands of visitors walk through that rail car and understand in a way no textbook can fully deliver what those numbers truly mean. The paperclip is a perfect object with no known inventor. It was claimed by a myth, adopted by a resistance movement, and carried across decades and continents until it became a vessel for the memory of millions. The person who actually designed the gem clip, the anonymous engineer or craftsman at a British manufacturing company more than 150 years ago, will never be known. Their name is gone. But their design is in every office, every home, every school bag in the world, and it has been in continuous production since before any living person was born. The paperclip never needed a name on it to matter. What it needed was people willing to give it meaning. And across 85 years of history, that is precisely what people did. A Norwegian student pinning one to his lapel in the shadow of soldiers who wanted to erase him. A child in Tennessee holding one between her fingers and beginning, for the first time, to truly understand. We are bound together. That was always the message. It still is.